I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all those that are here tonight present and also those that are here on Zoom. It's going to be just a special night where we're going to give some really great information from Fred Davies, who is a master herbalist. And we'll be able to give a great presentation. We sure appreciate Fred. We're going to start with a word of prayer. And since I didn't ask anybody out there to give a word of prayer for us, I'll give the word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are so thankful to have this opportunity to be here tonight and to gain more knowledge of the plants in this area that'll be good for us in a medical situation. We thank you so much for blessing us in this great country and blessing us with the freedoms we have, and wanting to know so much we love thee and appreciate thee, Father. May thy spirit be here tonight, we so pray, as we enjoy this evening, and do so, say these things in our Savior's name, even Jesus Christ. Amen. Fred, the rest of the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Russ, and thank you for joining us. This is also being videoed, so there might be thousands see this later. It's posted in a public video, so we'll try not to make too many faux pas. We are asking for participation, so feel free, even those on Zoom, feel free to unmute where we've got opportunities for some input. Is there anyone here who hasn't put a note up on the board? Okay, if you want to just grab a sticky and write a note, let's go to share screen. And where's the stickies at?
Here. Oh, she doesn't have a written. I didn't know any herbal remedies for first aid, so I didn't write them.
Ah.
You need to know that.
No, that's a good input though. And there were some chat notes. Do you want to just open chat for a second and see what, sorry, yeah, stop screen share, open chat, and just see what people had to say. An herbal remedy for eczema, okay, dehydration, diarrhea, heat stroke, and sunburn. We're going to talk about all of those except for eczema this week. And eczema all put on 2 weeks from now. So that's a great note. Because burns and sunburn is absolutely something we want to cover. All right, let's go to screen share and figure out where we're going here. Let's hit the next slide. You already know you're here, so let's go to the next slide. A quick introduction to myself. And my first class in herbs was at 17, and that was childbirth and what herbs are used for childbirth. You've heard some of my stories. And I've always been interested in it. I had a dream when I was 17 that I would be teaching people at this age, as an old guy, how to rebuild their health. And that's what I'm doing full time now. I am a master herbalist. What does master herbalist mean to anyone? Does it mean anything?
Been down a long road, learned a lot, got certified.
There is a certification, yes. It's actually schooling that goes along with it. If you're to take the schooling that a naturopathic doctor or a DO or even a medical doctor gets on anatomy and physiology, master herbalists have to have all of that also. We know every system in the body, how it works. The difference is I know what plants rebuild every system in the body and how to change the way the body works back to its normal self using plants. And so that's really what the difference is there. Because up till about the 1920s and 30s, there were a lot of people who understood how plants work. Now there's very few schools that teach that, and it's kind of switched over. So you have to dig through big books. You have to look for a good school that teaches herbal teaching, but it's available, and you actually can find that. 25 years of helping people be well. I do have clients all over the world, so I help with Zoom also. And plants and gardening go together, so I enjoy being outside, and I've got some opinions about gardening that probably we won't talk a lot about today. I might touch on a few of those, in 2 weeks, though. A disclaimer. First, if you're looking for medical advice or dental advice, you got to see somebody that's licensed in those. I am not licensed in those. I understand how the body works. So I'm here to teach just how the body works using plants, and that's why I'm here. That's my disclaimer. I don't read all that.
Next.
Yes, please. I'm flipping the slides here, but I don't have control over there. So we're having to double swap this. A question for you. You don't have to raise your hand, but if you are on medication and there's no transportation, there perhaps fuel is down or the electrical grid is down or whatever reason there's no transportation, that's been the premise of this whole preparation series of classes we've been having. What happens? How many days of prescription medication are available to you in your cupboard right now?
3 months.
3 months? 1 month? We heard at an earlier presentation that if the hospitals had a major issue where they got overran, they have 2 days worth of supplies. So knowing what you need is wise and is helpful. Thank you. So I want to ask the next question on that. After that month or 3 months worth of medication, and when that runs out, what is the outcome? What does your body do after that medication runs out?
It resorts back to whatever it can't do without
Okay.
Withdrawal.
Sometimes that withdrawal is pretty pronounced. Do you know what would happen if you weren't on any of the medications you're on?
Probably act crazier than I do.
Act a little bit different than you do now. Interestingly, I had 2 neighbors, people close to us, who went off of their anti-anxiety meds without planning to. Ran out, unable to get resupplied. The outcome in both cases was paralysis. One lost use of one arm. Another gentleman, a little older than that one, lost all movement from the waist down. Couldn't stand, didn't have enough upper body strength to even push himself up anymore. He was a vegetable laying in bed with no capacity to move, and that was anti-anxiety meds. When they asked me what to do, it took us almost a year to rebuild the damage using natural means to get the damage from going off suddenly back to normal again. All right, no more on that story, but the question is, do you want the knowledge to take care of your own wellness? So let's jump into just the first aid part of it today. That was what this was titled as first aid. This year happens to be my year off. I'll teach the principle right now that we weren't going to touch, but it has to make sense. We take herbs for 6 days and we take a day off. We don't want to make our body work when we're not working, right? So we take a day off. For 6 weeks, we take herbs, 6 days a week. We're rebuilding, we're working. Our body is working at that rebuild. And then we take a week off. 6 cycles of 7 weeks each, and we take a whole cycle of 7 weeks off. That ends the year. 6 years of rebuilding, and we take a year off. And I'm in my year off right now. And in my 60s, I feel better than I did when I was a teenager. Literally, I've got more energy. I don't have anything that's not working properly. And that's in my 60s. That was not always the case. I inherited a severely damaged pancreas, severely weak liver. My blood sugar levels were at the bottom, hungry all the time. From the time I was in my teens, clear till the point that I learned enough to rebuild the pancreas and the liver because they work together to balance blood sugars. That's not today's discussion, but that's just the tying it all together that if we rebuild, the plants are no longer needed. That's just the way we work. Once we're healthy again, we don't have to be continuing to take them. We do have to continue to eat properly, or we'll go downhill pretty quick. And there's a ton of extra blessings. I have 100% hearing today, where when I was a child, I had about a 25 to 30% hearing loss. My eyes are completely clear today. And through the middle years, I was prescribed glasses over and over again. That's the benefits of learning how the body works and what plants rebuild what systems of the body. Okay, let's go back to screen share and continue the discussion. I plan on having a few more handouts here. They should have arrived yesterday. The mail has slowed them down. They aren't here today when I left home. And about half of the herbs I ordered on the last order are out of stock. It's all the same. So my invitation to you is, as you learn about things tonight, think about how you can grow them in your own yard, because we need to have the capacity in our own yard to take care of ourselves. Or we need to have them stored in our own house to take care of ourselves. My wife and I started a program about 7, 8 years ago. We just, as we were rebuilding, we said, if that's a weak organ for our body, what's a 2-year supply? And so we have those herbs in dried form, and everything that will grow in the garden is in the garden also. And it's more than we need for right now. But it's essential that it's there. And I'll tell some stories about those as we go through this. Just a point, how many of you are gardening already? Awesome. Wow, that's beautiful. How many years does it take to learn how to grow things in your own yard? Please support it. We've been in Diamond Valley 5 years, and I'm just this year starting to hope for a good production on enough things. The last home we were in, we were growing about 80% of our food in our yard on a 1/4 acre. But it took the first 2 or 3 years to learn how that environment was and to figure out how to grow food in that environment. And so starting, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. What's the second best time?
Today.
Right now, yes, today. So please, as you learn things, I was just talking to my wife earlier today, and I had just finished building a new raised bed, and she says, that raised bed's going to get clear full of, and you'll find out in just a minute what that is. All right, let's go to the next slide. Hippocrates, clear back in the beginning of medicine, made a statement, first, do no harm. And people, if they don't understand herbs, they go, well, can't I hurt myself? I've got to make sure that you understand this concept before we start in, because there's a thing called the sufficiency principle with herbs. They're just plants, and you can't hurt yourself. It's like eating twice as much salad today as you're normally eating. What's going to happen if you eat twice as much salad as you normally eat? Body gets rid of it. Yes, it lets go of anything that it doesn't need. And that's the same with plants of any kind, herbs. Very few of them cause any reaction in the body other than maybe a cleansing process. And that's about it. You will not have damage from herbs. And I'll mention muscle testing a few times through. If you learn how to listen to your own body with muscle testing, you'll never damage yourself with herbs. You'll not even get a little bit of diarrhea or any other challenge, just because you know what to do and it works that way. Okay, ABCs at first aid is usually airway, breathing, and then circulation. Well, the plants I'm teaching next week that grow around here are perfect for airway and breathing. So not next week, 2 weeks from now. I don't want to cover them today. So we're going to jump to circulation as the first one. But first, I need to mention a book, which I brought extras of, and they're inexpensive, like $7 if you want one. Herbs to the Rescue is what it's called. I'm going to be referencing that. If you see an HTTR on a slide with a page number, it just means it's coming from this book. And this one book goes in. I've been carrying a kit just like this. This is a new one because mine's looking pretty ragged. But I've been carrying one just like this on scout camps and stuff for over 12, 15 years, something like that. And have used almost every item in it over those years, multiple times. And the reference book I carry in the side pocket is Herbs to the Rescue, because it teaches also what plants are available. Yeah, there's a stack of them here. It teaches what plants are available in the wild to treat that condition. One quick story before I jump in that came from this knowledge. Poison ivy. We don't have it around here, but how many of you have lived in an area that grows poison ivy quite prolifically? On a scout camp, I had walked through a nice archway of vines with the scouts, and I look up and I go, oh no, not poison ivy. And we were in shorts and t-shirts, and guess what? I knew how to counteract that poison. Plantain is a poison drawer. There's usually a plant nearby, if you know what plants are there, that will solve the challenge you just walked through or brought yourself into. It's just a matter of knowing the plants. This book covers lots of things, but we're going to cover at least part of these today. Bleeding, breathing, frostbite, heat stroke. There's lots of it in here. I'm going to just jump in then. All right, next slide. On page 100 in this book, there is a list of things that one plant will do. And there's 80 conditions solved by one plant. Let's go to the next slide. I don't want to have you reading through that, but did you notice what the name was at the top of that page? That's okay. We're going to talk about it for the next 6 slides, so it's fine. We're going to talk about bleeding, like nosebleed, internal bleeding, external bleeding, heart attack, stroke, and shock, all being solved by this one plant. And if I were to pull out my wallet right now and show you, I have a packet of that in my wallet because I carry it with me all the time. And why do I carry it with me? I was the leader in the shop where I was 60-something and everybody else was older than me. And most of them were, can I say, not in the best of health. I had 35 people working for me, all of them not in the best of health. And so I started carrying and made sure my assistant had in her purse all the time, what's in here? Cayenne pepper. So let's go to the next slide and just start learning. Before you walk out today, in fact, can I just hand that? And if you take one and put it in your purse or your wallet, we want to have that with us all the time. Let's go to the next slide and just start on it. Who's had a nosebleed before? How hard are they to stop? Yes, sometimes. Has anyone ever had a persistent nosebleed that just would not stop? Yeah, I was on a scout camp once. I had one of the boys His nose, he was obviously dehydrated. We'd been out doing tons of stuff. His nose was bleeding and it would not stop bleeding. He came to me, Fred, can you do anything? I said, how tough are you? I took cayenne, which you're putting in your pocket right now. I gave him a big glass full. He drank it down quick. He goes, his nose stopped bleeding immediately. It wasn't running anymore. But even after it had stopped, he said, if I'd known it was going to hurt that bad, I wouldn't have done it. By the time he finished saying it, his mouth had stopped hurting, and it was done. How long does cayenne in the mouth actually burn? A minute or two. It's once we finish talking about what it's good for, I have some cups here and some cayenne water. How much cayenne is in this water? One of these packets. 2 teaspoons. That's what you got in that packet. All right. So what stops the nosebleed the fastest? Cayenne pepper. In fact, it may be the only thing that will stop some bleeds. Please. I typically just throw it in water and drink it. That's the quickest way to get it. It starts absorbing in the mouth, and as it's going down the throat, and the bleeding stops. It's that fast. Let's go to the next one. External bleeding. Let me tell a story to introduce this one. We've got a lot of horse property around us here in Diamond Valley, and there's fences that need maintained once in a while. Well, there happened to be a rancher out on one of the bigger properties, a couple hundred acres, maintaining fences. And let's go to external bleeding slide. And he was using his knife to pull a staple out of the fence, and it slipped, and he cut his femoral artery. Well, how do you stop bleeding from a femoral artery?
Pressure.
Pressure's a really good idea, but you better dump enough cayenne in it to clot. Now, does cayenne hurt on a cut on the outside? Some people can feel a little bit. I have never felt it on the outside. My wife uses it quite frequently. She has cut the tip of her thumb off, I don't know how many times in the kitchen. And she'll pour a whole thing of cayenne on it and bandage it up good. And 3 days later, she's back to cutting normally again. But it stops external bleeding very quickly. Next slide. Shock. 6 years ago, I was at a friend's house down in St. George, helping him harvest pecans out of his tree in the middle of winter. I'm feeling like a kid. I climbed up into the tree, into the top, and was shaking branches and knocking pecans down. Who's got a pecan tree in this crowd? They're quite tall. I was standing 20 feet up. My feet were 20 feet up. In the winter, pecans are brittle. I didn't know that. I was standing on a branch about 6 inches in diameter, and I was holding on to a branch that was plenty big enough to support me. I've climbed a lot of trees. I'm a kid at heart. Both the branch I was standing on and the branch I was holding on to broke at the same time. That tree had gotten tired of me shaking it, and it was going to shake me out of it. And I fell 20 feet. Well, anybody know what a 60-year-old body does when you fall 20 feet? 9 bones this time. 3 ribs, 4 breaks in the pelvis, a hip, the sacral, and the shoulder blade, all on the left side. And I started seeing stars about 5 minutes later. And I'm going into shock. Pulled out my wallet, pulled the cayenne out of it, hand it, give me water quick. Ran in, dumped it in water. I drank it down. Within a minute, my body had stopped with the shock. I did not know until a couple of hours later in the emergency room that there was a huge, probably a quart and a half of blood, hematoma, in my abdomen from the breaks in the pelvis. Did that cayenne save my life? It stopped the internal bleeding. I only was thinking shock. I knew it would stop shock. I had no idea I was bleeding internally. I just knew I was in pain and was going in shock. So we can go to the next slide, because internal bleeding is also stopped with cayenne pepper. If after childbirth there's massive bleeding, is cayenne pepper the right thing to take?
Sounds like it.
Maybe. Shepherd's purse is a better one for childbirth bleeding. Here's your muscle testing. Make sure which one's right. Let's go one more. You're on it already. Heart attack. I want to ask for a raise of hand if you've had a heart attack. I will tell a story instead. My father was out working on his acreage, and his neighbor was out there chatting with him, and he suddenly just sat down and started going white and just non-responsive. Pain in the shoulder, so forth. The neighbor recognized the symptoms of a heart attack, ran into the house, which was a good sprint away, got a glass of cayenne pepper, ran back out, gave it to my dad, and 15 minutes later, he was back up working again. The heart attack had been stopped. I've used the same thing on a neighbor. I will not tell that story right now, but it works. I watched there for just 10 or 15 minutes, kept her talking. All the symptoms went away within 15 minutes. From tightness in the chest, lots of pain, all of it was done in 15 minutes. How many of you know somebody that's at risk of heart attack? It's a genetic challenge in your family. It is in my wife's. So what does she do on a daily basis to take care of that challenge? If she was brave enough, she would drink cayenne water. Dr. Christopher, because he had that type of genetics, he said, this Dr. Christopher, he said every day of his life, he drank a glass with a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons of cayenne pepper in it 3 times a day. That is a lot of cayenne pepper. My wife prefers to take it in capsules. She's taken it the other way a couple of times. She says, no. One thing to remember when you're taking cayenne pepper in that high of amounts, a 4-ounce cup with a little bit mixed in, 2 teaspoons total to that amount, will not cause that. But if you take 4, 5, 6 capsules at a time, a teaspoon or 2 at a time, you better have some food going in there and a lot of water when you take it, because if it hits your stomach and those capsules open up all at once, there's no food to balance it. Yeah, it'll burn well enough so that she has been found lying on the bathroom floor in a ball, curled up, moaning for about 5 or 10 minutes, because it hits all that sensitive tissue at once, and it's pretty strong. Start small, 1 capsule at meal times. Increase it until you're getting enough for your heart condition to change. You have to be in charge of that one with your own muscle testing. How about a stroke? Who's had a stroke? Member of their family with a stroke. Okay. What's the traditional, how do you recognize a stroke first? Yell it out. Let's hear it. How do you recognize a stroke? Slurred speech, sagging in one side of the face, maybe unable to move one side of their body. Sometimes non-responsive. There's other symptoms. It's worth learning what those are. How do you prevent a stroke? It is. It's cayenne pepper. It's amazing. Quick story on a stroke. A couple of years ago, 2 years ago roughly, my father-in-law, who's getting older, he's 89 now, if I remember right, and he's lost enough mobility that my wife's sister moved into the house with him so that he could have somebody caring for him. And he was talking to his son one time on the phone. She's in the room. Suddenly the talking goes to pure garble. He can't get any words out, not understandable, and is showing enough other signs. She heads to the hospital, heads to the emergency room, calls my wife and I on the way down to the emergency room and says, "We're on our way to the hospital. Dad's had a stroke." And I asked, what is the first question I asked her when she's, exactly, did you give him cayenne pepper already? No, I forgot. We're on our way. So my wife had made a cayenne tincture. My wife, thank you. My wife had made a cayenne tincture. This, made by Dr. Christopher's company, is 40,000 heat units. That's the normal tincture. And it's probably made in an alcohol that's a 50% alcohol or less, because cayenne extracts pretty easily. Well, my wife's tincture was made with 180 heat unit, 180,000 heat unit cayenne pepper in vodka. I didn't know anything except for it said cayenne tincture on the outside of it. When we got to the hospital, it was pre-COVID. They let us get all the way into the emergency room where he was at. The nurse stepped out for a minute. You hear it coming. I asked him, "Dad, do you want some cayenne?" He managed to shake his head yes. I opened it. I put 3 dropperfuls straight in his mouth.
Oh, that's a lot.
Alcohol and 180 proof alcohol and 180 heat unit, 1,000 heat unit cayenne. He drank 2 whole liters of water before he stopped drinking water. And guess what? His blood pressure that was 230 plus dropped to 130 in about 10 minutes. And he showed no more signs of a stroke after that.
Still slurring his voice first.
He wasn't slurring anymore. He was just trying to drink more water.
Was he a little drunk?
With that much water, no. But
With the vodka?
oh no, it's only 3 dropperfuls.
Oh.
It's there's roughly 30 drops in a dropperful, so you're talking maybe a teaspoon, something in that range, which isn't a lot of alcohol, but it is a lot of heat.
What's the mechanism of action of cayenne? You know,
That's a really good question.
can you repeat it? What's
Oh, how does it work? How does cayenne work to take care of so many different things? I will only mention one of the mechanisms because that's what we've been talking about here. It lets the body balance the blood pressure throughout the body. So typically when we're injured, we have 2 responses: constriction and hyper push. And it just goes, relax, balance everything out. And so the body can stop bleeding. It's not got that hyper reaction. I had a gentleman that was on quite high amounts of blood thinner, and he had some dental work done, and his mouth wouldn't quit bleeding. It took a lot of cayenne to get his mouth to stop bleeding. He'd been bleeding for hours, but within 15 minutes, we had the bleeding stop. But it balances it back out again and gets it to stop bleeding. That's not a complete answer, but this is a good time to mention this. I have a 8-page paper that talks about the properties of cayenne, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to just send that around, and I can email that 8-page paper out so that you can read for yourself all the other properties and why it works the way it does. Shall we move forward? Any other questions on cayenne? Please.
A person who's had a stroke, it was 10 years ago, hasn't had a recurrence. Would you put him on cayenne? I mean, would it be like a good maintenance thing?
Let's answer that with the reason I do what I do. Because you ask in a very specific method. I'm not a doctor. I don't prescribe or diagnose anything, but I do teach people how to learn for themselves what their body needs. And then I give them the list of things that have a potential for making a difference there. And cayenne is one of those that helps to ensure there's enough blood flow to the brain. Almost at the end of this presentation, I'm going to talk about concussion and brain injury type things, and we're going to talk about the other products that help ensure there's enough healing to the brain when we touch on that. Russ?
If you have a blood pressure issue going on, you not wanting to be on medication or be on medication, away from that. Sounds like cayenne pepper is pretty good. So how much would, that reason is different. How much would you recommend taking that?
Cayenne pepper with garlic and a few others, and perhaps no, herb just disappeared. I'll catch it when it comes back. It's growing in my yard right now, yarrow. Yarrow is another one that works on blood pressure. And it'll stop bleeding on the external. You can actually crush yarrow up if you have the plant and stop external bleeding. All those are good. Again, back to the original, your body has to tell you which one's right for you. And it will tell you what plants are right for your body so that 100% sure you know what's right for you. Okay. Oh, I threw that one to the top. That's right. I said, let's talk about it while we're there. So a head injury or a concussion, the first thing is don't move that individual. You don't know whether they've done a neck injury at the same time they've got a head injury. Make sure that you've got immobilization and properly trained people moving that individual. Cayenne first to ensure that there's no internal bleeding and to make sure there's no blockages in the brain. It balances the blood pressure to ensure that there's no damage being done by extra swelling in the brain. Get them to medical, make sure that the swelling's not damaging. Cayenne also prevents and corrects paralysis. We're not going to talk about that one, but I could tell several stories on that. Once they're stable and safe, let's go to the next slide. Rebuilding the brain, nerve, and spine. Dr. Christopher's Relaxes would be one that I would check. Dr. Christopher's Mind Track. Relaxes is a nerve rebuilder. Mind Track is a brain function rebuilder. Complete Tissue and Bone is a everything body rebuilder. Calcium is almost always needed when we're rebuilding neurological things. Plant-based calcium. Jurassic Green, which is just a combination that he's got with, and I probably ought to explain why I'm talking about Dr. Christopher's products. For over 25 years, I've used his products. They work. I use some singles, but even a program I watched today was talking about how powerful combinations or formulas are in those things. And that's been my experience. For 25 years, I have found that Dr. Christopher's formulas work as long as it's exactly what you need. Any other questions before we jump to burns? All right. Burns of all kinds. Thank you. That was, I wondered. No, probably not. It is interesting. We taught this same class to a group of teenagers over the course of 4 weeks. And I did a final test after the end of that class. And the answer to every one of all 15 questions was cayenne. On and about question number 7 or 8, you could hear snickering going on in the class. Cayenne, cayenne, cayenne. But I figured if they're going to, and the one thing I didn't teach here, I took the slide out, for teenagers, cayenne is an excellent help on acne. So, took that slide out. All right, burns, sunburn. First, my own story. Had gone to Hawaii with the family, got too much sun on the ocean side where it's bouncing down, bouncing back up at you, and I was pretty well burned. Had complete tissue and bone with me. I don't know if, yeah, you can see it on the slide if it's there. Had complete tissue and bone with me, rubbed it on. It took care of the sunburn. Some other things that are helpful for larger burns, and I'm just going to mention this quickly. If it's a very large burn, Dr. Christopher's combination, and I've used it myself. I don't have a picture of it in this presentation, but I burned the whole upper half of my arm, 2nd degree type burn. And so I use this combination: comfrey powder, lobelia powder, honey, and wheat germ oil. You make it into a paste consistency and just pack it on and pack it on and pack it on. Go ahead. That's a really good point. Sunscreen is almost always toxic. Yes, preventative. It keeps the skin moist. That's one of the things it does. It feeds what it needs. It's not made as a sunburn cream. It's just, it works. Scout camp story really quick. My stepson, you know how teenagers are. If a parent says something, it's automatically wrong, right?
Right, do the opposite.
So we were out camping. He'd gotten a pretty bad sunburn from the canoeing and stuff. And he was hurting. He comes, Fred, where's the complete tissue and bone right? After he'd gotten himself settled in, he used, this is a 2-ounce jar. I had the 4-ounce jar on it. He used the entire jar on the rest of the boys in the camp. It was gone. And he was touting its benefits. Teenagers have to be the smart one, though, of course. Aloe vera, how many of you used aloe vera on sunburn? It works, doesn't it? Absolutely. Cut the leaf open and smear it on. How about lavender essential oil? Who's used that on a... Interestingly, if it's a serious burn, what will lavender essential oil do? Make it worse. Even with a 1-drop to 20-drop carrier, it'll actually hurt worse sometimes. I've had it happen to people. That's why muscle testing, please.
Have you tried nano silver on sunburn?
Never. Haven't.
It's great.
Okay. So How do you know what's right for your burn?
Kinesiology.
Yes, muscle testing, kinesiology. Ask your body what's right. I made the mistake on the burn on my arm of going, oh, I'll do lavender on it. It hurt worse. It didn't do any help at all. Until I finally said, wait a minute, where's my tool of muscle testing? And then I started actually making progress and made the comfrey paste and so forth, and it started working.
It's okay to use straight lavender. I've used straight lavender oil on lots of sunburns. It seems to work really well every time. All my kids and my family members.
I've had some of my burns. In fact, we had just processed a bunch of peppers we had harvested out of the garden, and I had burned my hands with pepper juice. The lavender pulled it right out. But on that particular burn, it wasn't a sunburn, it was an actual hot water second degree burn. No, that is not the right solution for my body. I should have asked it before I did it. Please.
I can't help it. I have to share one thing. It's crazy. It's the craziest thing. Really bad burn. You don't have anything in the house. You don't have lavender. You don't have anything, but you have a potato. Have you heard about the potato?
We do now, please.
Throw the potato and the juicer, juice it all up, and you slap it on it, or put it in the bag with a hand in it. It's incredible what it does. Immediately takes the pain.
I love it.
Then I follow it up with something else. But the potato is, even when young girl stepped on a curling iron and she burned the bottom of her foot in the arch and she just couldn't quit crying, and I just threw it in a plastic bag and stuffed her foot in there and she put it on.
Wonderful. Thank you. I love more knowledge of natural things because usually we've got a potato. We may not have complete tissue and bone.
Right. Okay, you want one more? I'll say one more. This is fun. This walking, we went to our daughter's horse that we were at Ponderosa last weekend, and as we were leaving, we were coming down to the horse trailer, and there's campers walking along, and he's got a nosebleed. It's just pouring out of her, and I said, like, stop, I can't do this, stop. We backed up, and I said, do you need some help? And she says, do you have anything? She was asking for some tissue. I says, yes, but I have something there. So I took my ponytail thing off, and I says, here, put this on your ring finger here, and use it as a tourniquet till your blood stops flowing.
Pressure points.
Yeah, immediately.
So I have to share this one, even though it's not part of what we're talking about. How many of you had teeth work and can't do anesthetics? I can't do any anesthesia for dental work. My body won't clear it fast enough. I'd rather have 10 minutes of pain than 3 days of pain. So take your fingers, lace them together like this, push hard into each other until you can feel that hard. In 15 minutes, all of the nerves in the mouth are turned off, and you can do any amount of dental work with no pain.
That's great.
5 of them.
5?
Without any pain. Before I learned enough natural and I made a bad dental decision when I was in my 20s, and so I lost that many teeth.
Did you continue to do this at the time?
I usually sit in the waiting room just before I go in, like this, and then as the dentist is drilling, I just sit here like this.
Oh.
And the dentist says, "You're going to bite my fingers off." And I said, "Keep going. You're doing just fine."
That doesn't help syndrome.
Does it seem like the price of lavender's gone up? I went to buy some like 6 months ago, and like one little bottle is like $50 or something.
Yeah, the price of a lot of the herbs has gone through the roof too. And as I mentioned before you walked in, half of them are not available right now. Literally half of the singles and the combinations that I typically ordered over and over again are not available. Because there was a good amount of knowledge passed along with COVID and people stockpiled on naturals. Did you see the same thing? Yeah. Okay, so let's look at just a couple of examples of bad burns and what complete tissue and bone will do on it. Yep, let's go to the next slide as soon as it comes up. This is an arm on a 17-year-old teenager. She burned her arm and most of the front of herself. Second and third degree burns. This is day 12. Her mother called and said, what can we do? She's burned all of this area. And I said, you know muscle testing. Check if complete tissue and bone will work. Yep, it will. Then start piling it on. They went through, that's a 2 ounce. I usually carry 4 ounce. They went through literally 5 pounds, whatever that is in ounces, to get her to day 12. But look at the difference. It's not second and third degree burns now. It is got only 2 small areas that are still open on day 12. That was almost a week ago, and I didn't hear back from her today to hear how it's going, but I'm assuming everything's closed. Next slide. And note at the bottom of that, I have this in this kit that I carry with in my backpack and in my home all the time. That is something I do not go without. That goes in my, between cayenne in my wallet and this one, even when I'm going on a trip, I carry just a few things with me in my suitcase or in my backpack. And that happens to be one of them because it has so many uses. All right, these hands are a 9-year-old girl. Her mother had gotten off work late. She was making herself a cup of tea, poured the water on her hand in the dark so she wouldn't wake up mom instead of turning on the light. And so this is boiling water on her hand. And day 2, it looked like the first picture there with complete tissue and bone on it. This is someone that worked for me. I'll tell enough of a story so it ties together. Mother had come to work, was looking quite concerned. And I said, what is wrong? Named her. My daughter just burned her hand and she's in a lot of pain. What are you doing for her? I had this in my desk drawer this a couple years ago when I was still working with team. I handed it to her. I said, go home now. We'll cover for you until you get back. Get this on your daughter's hand now. She doesn't need to sit 8 hours in pain. She went home, sent me the day 2 picture the next day. Day 7, it had completely sealed over. Day 14, it had healed. So it moves pretty quick. How to put it on. This is new tissue growing. So let me tell you my thumb story real quick as a better illustration. I had sliced, doing some car work for a friend, I had sliced the total top of my thumb, the whole width of it, clear to the bone, off, all the way top to bottom. No skin left. Complete tissue and bone on that, and just a wrap on it. Every time I started to feel it again, because pain is a red warning light. That's all it is. It's telling you you need materials. Pain is not to be turned off. Pain is to be honored, appreciated, listened to. Every time I could feel it, I'd unwrap it, put more on the gauze, thick, 1/4 inch thick of the complete tissue and bone ointment, and roll it back onto it again. You don't put it right on the skin. There was no skin there. It was an open wound. You don't want to disturb new cells as they're starting to develop. You just provide the materials. By day 4, I had no scar. The materials had been kept there for 4 days, 24 hours a day, in sufficient amounts to completely heal over. There is no scar. There's no scar tissue, period, when you keep enough materials.
That need to be refrigerated.
It says refrigerate after opening. If you're using it, it's got beeswax in it. I don't refrigerate the one that's on my bathroom counter. It sits there. If I've got another bottle so it'll last longer, I leave that in the refrigerator. But this is good for 6 or 8 months, and it's always gone by then. So no, I don't refrigerate the one that's open. I've had some people going, it's so hard, it says refrigerate. I said, stop refrigerating it. You're using it. Great question. Thank you for that question. All right. This comes in a lot of different formats. Complete tissue and bone is good for cuts, scrapes, wounds, internal damage. We talked about burns already. It comes in capsules, massage oil, ointments, and a bulk so that you can use the bulk. It's called bone, flesh, and cartilage, BF&C, in bulk, because as a bulk, you can make a decoction, soak a foot in it. If you're trying to heal massive problems like scoliosis on the back, S-curved back, boil up a bunch, let it cool down just far enough so that it's cool enough to soak a cloth, put on the back, 20 minutes a day. 7 or 8 weeks later, scoliosis is gone completely. Please.
The comfrey, I understand it's illegal to sell encapsulated comfrey.
The capsules have lungwort in it. In fact, if you look at the thing here, it says lungwort internal. Go back to that again. Lungwort's internal, comfrey's on the external. When you're rebuilding, on that side bench, there are handouts for rebuilding joints like knees, elbows, shoulders, back. There's a handout for back rebuild. You will see on that handout complete tissue and bone to rub in. And when I rebuilt my knee after 8 years of pain, I didn't just rub it in the knee. If my elbow is easier to see, I rubbed it in a whole hand width below, a whole hand width above, and all the way around for a good 5 to 7 minutes. Force as much in there as can be. Take the capsules, do it twice a day. Within a few weeks, a knee that had bothered me for 8 years with a torn meniscus, 2 torn interior ligaments, and a shredded cartilage was completely rebuilt. That was in 1996, 25 years ago, and today my knees are still 100% flexible, movable, no pain. I can do anything with them. That's the difference between rebuilding and the other things we do. The body rebuilds, it rebuilds wonderfully and beautifully permanent. High and deep heat. Why in the back or joint rebuild do I include high and deep heat as an optional? It helps complete tissue and bone go down into the tissue faster and speeds the healing process significantly. Now, another thing it does. I retired from the Air Force after 27 years. One of those assignments was the White House Communications Agency, which is 800 military people providing communication for the president and the presidential staff, and flying all over the world to do that. We would fly in to a stateside location, set up enough telephones to have an army running. At that time, this is before cell phones were massive. We would have to set up roughly 60 phones. Well, each box of phones weighed 40 pounds. I would grab a box in each hand, tuck one underneath of each arm. I weigh 140 pounds. I would carry 160 pounds in and run up the stairs with it because we had a whole building to set up in just a couple of days. When I went to bed at night, I would have torn muscles in my back sometimes, and the cayenne deep heat ointment, I'd rub it in deep, go to bed, and the next morning I'd wake it up without torn muscles. They'd be fine, and I'd go through the whole process again the next day. So cayenne deep heat is wonderful for torn muscles. It is just so beautiful.
Would that be good for torn meniscus? Or would you use the other?
I would rebuild because a torn meniscus is actually cartilage. And that, the old name, I don't have it here, but bone, flesh, and cartilage was changed to complete tissue and bone. Still got all the same materials in it. It does rebuild cartilage. The one thing I add to that process for cartilage is mullein, M-U-L-L-E-I-N. 2 weeks from now, we'll spend a lot more time on mullein because it has so many other properties. But mullein rehydrates the cartilage and it makes it slick so that it can have the bone slide against it without catch, pain.
Referring to 2 weeks from now, is it the series? Is it the first of the series?
Diamond Valley Prep series has been going on for almost 6 months now. Every other week. And it just happened that I'm these 2 weeks and then I'm about a month down the road from that, teaching whole person balance and why that's so critical for us to be prepared. So I got at least these 2 in a row.
2 weeks from tonight,
2 weeks from tonight, same place.
same time.
Yes. Let's keep going. Nausea. What works for nausea? Lots of hydration, maybe sometimes. Ginger tea or ginger capsules is an excellent one for nausea. It's been well known forever for nausea. Yes, it works nice in food too. And the thing I love about a lot of these, cayenne we should have in our house all the time in our spice cupboard. Ginger, my wife always has ginger root in the refrigerator. We cook stir fry, we use it in quite a few dishes. I love ginger tea. Take the root out, grate about 1/4 inch into a cup, pour some boiling water over it, cap it, and drink a nice cup of ginger tea. It is so calming to the stomach. If you've got stomach problems, there's lots of research on ginger tea before every meal will clear those stomach problems in a few months.
So you drink before meals? Can you grow it in your yard? Ginger?
We've wanted to, but this environment here is just not conducive to growing it. So the root's just something we buy.
Is it too dry or something around here?
Yes, and it takes a couple of years for it, and it just doesn't make it through the cycle. It's maybe in a greenhouse it would because it doesn't freeze and superheat like we do in this area, but it won't grow in this area. The other thing about ginger is it's antibiotic and antiviral. So in a colder flu season, this is one of the first things I go to, is ginger. Antibiotic and antiviral, and calms the stomach. Now, if you have a child with stomach ache, ginger is fine. A mild, watered down tea. I would tend to go to the mints for a stomach ache and nausea for a child. Peppermint, catnip, spearmint, catnip especially for children. And catnip and fennel is well known for that. And then slippery elm is the other one that I would probably do with children for stomach type things. I would do tea if at all possible, especially for children, a watered down tea. I've done that for children as young as like 8 or 9 months. Watered down tea and do fine. My neighbor needed that just a few months ago. Child with some stomach problems and muscle testing said ginger was the right solution for it. And slippery elm that we just mentioned works for a lot of other things. We're doing okay on time. I'll whip through them faster. Won't tell quite as many stories, maybe. Slippery elm. Go to the next slide on slippery elm. I have to mention this at least. Slippery elm is nutritive enough that you can take an adult, an elderly adult that's failing, and give them nothing but slippery elm gruel because their stomach will actually handle that, and it's got enough nutrition to keep them healing and getting better. It calms stomach tissue. Quick story. A friend's husband, Crohn's disease, if he ate the wrong thing, he would immediately, at a restaurant, one spoonful, and he was running to the bathroom and would be in the bathroom for the next 30 minutes as the body flushed and cleared out. Slippery elm, he started carrying that with him all the time. If he hit something that caused a diarrhea response, he'd down 7 or 10 or 20 capsules of slippery elm, and it just calms the body so quickly. It calms the intestinal tissue so fast. And over time, it calms the intestinal tissue enough so it starts healing and can rebuild. It is a prebiotic. It acts as a home for the friendly bacteria to live in. And so they have a place that they're safe in, and they can start repopulating and start rebuilding the friendly flora in the gut. So that's why slippery elm is so, so important.
Might help with gluten sensitivity, though?
Yes, with gluten sensitivity, as you call it, this will often solve it. I found people usually have an emotional cause that goes along with that. We need to solve. I don't work on just physical. Yes, I'm a master herbalist, but we look at spiritual, emotional, and mental causes on everything because our body follows what our spirit and emotion has started. That's part of the process of what it does. 90% of all disease starts in the bowel. And that's why slippery elm is so critical for helping in that. And then slippery elm helps to restore normal motility a little bit to the gut too. Constipation is one of those issues that creates problems in the bowel. So increasing the water, increasing the natural foods, increasing the other things, because a toxic bowel, there we go. A toxic bowel is our main trash elimination channel. And if it's clogged or it's unhealthy, we're creating severe problems in the body. And so we want to make sure that we keep that healthy, and slippery elm is one of those. And the other one, go to the next slide, is the lower bowel formula. A gentle broom that picks up toxins and pulls them out. And so that one's a pretty important formula. I'm going to keep going. We could talk for an hour on lower bowel alone. That's a separate topic.
Do you know anything about prolapse rift? That's what my mom had.
Yes, and there's a totally different process to rebuild that. And yes, we do know how to rebuild it. It usually goes with prolapsed uterus at the same time. The lymphatic system. We have a positive pressure system, a fresh water system, if you will, in our body, pumped by the heart. We have a non-pressurized system in the body for toxic fluids, like our sewage in our house. And it's called the lymphatic system. Intracellular space has lymph around it. How does that lymph move? There's not gravity to move it like we have in our house. How does that lymph move? and get into lymph nodes to be cleaned and keep moving around.
Muscle.
There's one-way check valves that open and close and push
Yes, and what moves it into that check valve?
the up and down movement.
Yes, muscle, exercise, moving your body. And that's our only way of hauling out the trash daily. If we don't do that on a daily basis, get up and move and really keep that movement going, the toxins get to the point where it turns acid and cancer is developed. Cancer grows in an acid environment. The lymph nodes are made to clear cancer. We won't take any more time on that topic. But if we're running sluggish or if we have swollen lymph nodes, this used to be called the lymphatic formula. That was too plain for the Food and Drug Administration. They told them they had to call it something less plain. They called it infection for a long time. Still too plain. Now it's called XINFX. XINFX. Go to the next slide. It's on that slide, I think. No, I still got the infection name on it. But that clears the lymph nodes. It's a lymphatic cleaner, and it cleans infections out of the body too. It works for a ton of different things, infections of all kinds. Let's go to the next slide. Allergies or autoimmune disorders, marshmallow root and astragalus. Thank you. One person heard that word, astragalus. Why astragalus? Astragalus is an adaptogenic plant. Adaptogens increase our ability to handle stress by about 4 times. And they each have their own property. There's 21 plants in that group of adaptogens or stress plants. Ginseng is one of those that you might know quite well and have heard of.
It's called immune.
Immucalm. Immucalm. Astragalus, one of its other properties is it either builds up the immune response if that's what's supposed to happen, or it calms the immune response if that's what's needed. And so while Dr. Christopher called that Immucalm, it actually is an immune formula, and it will help the body ramp up the immune system if that's what's needed also. So don't think you have to only take it because you need to calm down the immune system. This is what I primarily suggest testing for if someone has a autoimmune disorder or an allergy to the food or gluten or something like that. So that's one of the things along the slippery elm that I suggest for gluten type problems.
But also for hay fever.
Yes, but there's a couple of others that work better on hay fever. So Immucalm. Now, you're going to ask me why astragalus and self-dividing. To my knowledge, there's only one plant in the world. There's got to be others. God never creates just one. But I'm only aware of one that increases the telomeres on our cells. As you age, as our cells divide, they split, and the little tail gets shorter every time it splits until it's too short to split again. And then we can't create new cells every single day, and we have to die. The cells can't keep recreating. The beautiful thing about astragalus is it protects the telomeres and helps them to be full length. Part of my routine, pretty much round the year when I'm doing rebuilds, is I take the Immucalm combination or I take astragalus by itself. I needed, a customer was looking for astragalus. I was out upstairs in my normal herb cupboard. I ran downstairs. Yep, there's 3 pounds. We have astragalus in our 2-year supply because that's a constant use. Keeping my body young. That's why I still feel like a teenager and I'm climbing trees and doing less than responsible things in a 60-something-year-old body, because astragalus helps with telomeres stay healthy. That's as much as I can mention on this slide. Let's go to the next one. Epilepsy, seizures, anything like that. Antispasmodic formula, ANTSP, they had to shorten that one also, sorry. Antispasmodic formula. I've got several neighbors, friends, clients that are taking that daily because of family tendencies towards seizures or epilepsy. And as long as they're taking it, they have no problem at all. Just a few plants, very simple, gentle plants that help the body work properly.
Good for tremors too?
It depends on, there's a lot of new research on the palsies and stuff. Relaxes that I showed on the previous slide, and this, and then we correct the gut bacteria for that. That's a whole discussion, but that's a gut bacteria issue largely. Next slide. I'm mentioning sting and bite ointment for bugs, bites, and bee stings. Plantain ointment used to be called sting and bite ointment. Plantain is a plant that looks like that. Doesn't grow easily around here. We finally have 3 nice little patches that it took us 3 years to get started. And I'm just watering them and encouraging them to keep growing, because in wetter climates in the east, it's in every lawn. Here, it's hard to get growing. What does it do? Pulls poison out. I have teenagers working for me in the morning. One day, the 13-year-old girl got bit by a bee as she was coming to work for me. I just got a bee sting, she says. Okay, picked 1 leaf off of my precious plants. You're still getting started. Chew this enough for it to be soft. Put it on your bee sting. She did. We worked the hour. She didn't ever notice her bee sting again. It pulled the poison out.
Other snake bites?
It will. And in fact, what did I read? There's another one. This will, it's not known as snake bite. This book goes specifically into what plants clear snake bite. Plantain also will pull blood poisoning out. Yes. Anytime you see HTTR in the top corner, those pages are to this. So almost everything we covered tonight has those things in here.
Did you say blood poison?
Blood poisoning. If you've got blood poisoning, for example, if you cut and it got dirty and the red starts running up the arm, you can pull it right back out just by packing it with plantain or plantain ointment.
What about the COVID shot?
I don't know. There's too many variables in that that I have no idea. You'd have to use your own muscle testing to find out what would work on that one. Let's continue. More poisoning things. I've got to tell a couple of stories about tincture of lobelia. I had, last year, I'm a new beekeeper. I haven't learned enough about them. And I got 9 bee stings all at once. And I'm slightly sensitive to any kind of bites, stings, and things. I swell up really bad. And so my arm was swollen and my energy just went through the floor. And I was using the plantain, the sting and bite ointment, pull the poison out. I was using lobelia internally to counteract the poison. And interestingly, I'll show you on the next slide, echinacea tincture is also a poison counteractor. Took me a couple of days to get up to full energy again, but with that, I managed to completely reverse it. Didn't make the trip to the hospital, managed to take care of those 9 stings without any problem at all. Lobelia, poisoning first. Let's talk about it. To vomit or not to vomit. If you got poisoning, what do you do first? If you don't know what it was, or if you do know what it was. Yeah, read the label. Don't vomit if it's something caustic and is going to do more damage as it comes up. Call the poison control if you need that kind of help. They'll tell you what to do to limit the damage. If it's something that you can vomit and it needs to be counteracted as it's coming out, lobelia tincture counteracts the poison and it creates vomiting in high amounts. 2 or 3 dropperfuls will tell the body it's okay to relax and just expel it. 5 to 10 drops counteracts the poison. You may have to do that every 15 minutes. Like I've had to sometimes, just keep doing it, just small amounts, 5 to 10 drops. Use your muscle testings, you know how high to go. But you can know exactly how much you can take and counteract that poisoning. Food poisoning the same way. I got food poisoning one time, a whole day of just suffering. I finally remember, oh, lobelia. An herbalist doesn't always remember when they're in trouble themselves. That way it helps to have more than one person in the family that knows what to do.
What about activated charcoal?
For some things, activated charcoal will help because it captures it. Is that the right word? Pulls it in. This actually counters it. So when I'm fighting that kind of stuff, the other one is the mud. The mud's not the right. Clay, thank you. Clay is the other thing that I'll use sometimes, along with lobelia and echinacea to try and counteract the poisons. Are we at echinacea? I'm not going to spend any more time on lobelia. There's more information there in the slides. Echinacea, antiseptic, anti-putrefaction. It's a great healing agent where there's decay. Put it on the outside. It actually will help decaying tissue rebuild again. Echinacea is wonderful for that. Here's your snake bite stuff. If you read the last line there, the Sioux Indians used it for snake bites, and it works for it. So, non-venom. My dog got bit by a rattlesnake right over the heart. We used dandelion root, plantain, and I forget the third one. She made it. Took a lot of energy work, Reiki and stuff, but she made it. 3 days later, she was back running. Her chest swelled 4 inches. She lost a good chunk of flesh over the heart, but she was back to normal real quick.
Are you going to share with us of what you grow in your garden?
I will tell you anything that will grow here, I try to grow here because mullein, yes. I've mentioned plantain, cayenne. I meant to mention that. My echinacea, yes. Yep, it's in the yard. In the highest amounts, I have space for it. And marshmallow root, and I could go on and on. We've got a dozen different things that I won't name. Of our yard, it doesn't look very pretty because right now it's an overgrown, who's been to my place? It's an overgrown flower patch, isn't it?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's the metal. The metal, which is out here for it.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
I have concrete growing in my yard.
Yes, I do have comfrey also. It just got started. This is only its second year.
I mean, I planted it in November, so I don't know if it's gonna make it the whole year or not yet. Let's see.
Awesome. Yeah, it's worth having every one of those in the yard. Anything you can learn about, because most of these can be used fresh on a wound or a cut or taken internally. When I was a kid, my parents had comfrey growing in the garden. I intuitively knew I needed it. I would go pick a leaf and chew on that leaf and just eat it. So yeah, especially if our children have it available to them, they will learn like animals do. The dog will go out and eat what it needs to correct the problem. We can do the same thing if we are exposed to it often enough. Something I read just a couple of days ago, and I'll keep this really short. In a lot of countries, the children had the assignment to go out and pick the herbs and harvest the nuts and so forth. And interestingly, with the TV and games and so forth, this newest generation is not doing it anymore in the indigenous. And they're losing that information. In one generation, will lose all knowledge of what to use for their body, and it won't be intuitive to them anymore. Eye damage. We want to cover this one real quick because we're already at 8 o'clock. We're at an hour and a half, and it's gone so fast, but I want to cover the last couple of things. If you have to leave, I'm okay, but I don't want to skip the few things that are at the end of this because 2 weeks from now, we've got a full run also. Eye damage. This kit has eye drops in it and an eye cup in it. Because if you get something in your eye while you're out, the program, there's a sheet on that side bench where how to rebuild your eyes back to a full 20/20 vision. But this is for emergency. A couple of drops of this, a little bit of water, put the eye cup on, wash out whatever is in the eye, and recover. I help people clear styes. I help people clear toxins out of the eye, just teaching them how to do it, and it takes off. So that's very, very important. Super Garlic Immune Formula. Another one of those. Used to be called anti-plague formula. Super Garlic Immune. One day, scout camp again, I woke up feeling horrible. I don't know if I had something I ate the night before or whatever, but I felt horrible. Woke up enough to go, what's up? I took about a half a bottle and got moving for the day and was fine. It's extremely strong anti-plague, antibiotic, antibacterial. I won't take time to try and go through the ingredients in it, but you can see garlic is the first ingredient there. And then several others that help clean out the body and that are antibacterial, antiviral. Skullcap happens to be an antiviral also, and I'm going to mention this because it won't get mentioned otherwise. Herpes zoster virus that causes cold sores, shingles, the common childhood disease, chickenpox, thank you, hides or puts itself in the spine. Skullcap that you just saw kills it where it hides. And so we don't have to worry about getting shingles as we age. Or if we get them, I won't tell another story right now, but I walked in on a lady doing a radio show with her. She's sitting there in pain. What's wrong? I've got shingles. Here, take this. 10 minutes later, the show started. She was able to make it through the show and felt completely better by the end of it because it kills it where it hides.
My friend had shingles and then it turned into Bell's palsy.
Yeah, because they're both neurological.
What would she use that?
Relaxes is the combination with skullcap in it, and it rebuilds the nerves also. Mostly internal, but when I had shingles, again on the side of my face, I put it topically also. That's too painful to not treat every way you can.
What substance are you talking about? The stuff you take for?
Skullcap and relaxes.
Oh, both of them.
Yeah. For Bell's palsy and shingles. It takes a very aggressive approach for shingles and Bell's palsy. And some people I've worked with just not willing to be that aggressive. You got to take enough of the herbs to kill. You got to be as aggressive with the plant as it's being against your body. And that's just one of those principles. These are plants. Take them, eat them, put them on in a high enough amount so it'll work. Aseptic is just a powerful natural antiseptic. I won't spend any more time on that one. Glandular system massage oil, tons of things it does. Mullein is its primary ingredient. We're going to spend a lot more time on mullein in 2 weeks and the powerful things that it does. But for a thyroid gland, or any other gland, in addition to taking the food for that thyroid, which is kelp, I would rub on the glandular massage oil because it needs the mullein and the lobelia to feed that and help it to heal. Lobelia? Yes. And yes, I have a little bit of it growing in the yard in that flower patch that's in my front. Ear and nerve. How many people have lost hearing? The ear? Yeah. Ear and nerve formula and the garlic. Please. Ear and nerve formula and garlic are the process to restore the hearing. Couple of drops a day. First garlic, killing the infection. Then the ear and nerve, morning and night, 6 days a week. 7th day, wash it out with half apple cider vinegar and half distilled water.
Ringing in the ears.
Ringing in the ears is normally, sometimes this works, but that's normally an allergy response or a pressure response on a nerve there. We've got to find out what it is. That's why muscle testing is the only way to know the reason there.
So what was that one called?
Ear and nerve formula and garlic oil. Couple of drops of each, morning and night. Put a cotton ball in it so it doesn't go out until it's had a chance to work. Rinse it out with a syringe at least once a week with apple cider vinegar, half distilled water.
So you just put those in the ear.
Yes. And then the next slide is garlic. We could spend an entire hour on the benefits of garlic. The Russians used garlic during World War II. They ran out of other things. It's a wonderful, wonderful antibiotic, antiviral, and antifungal. One story has to be shared with garlic. When I get a cold or a flu, as soon as I feel a tickle, a nose, anything, I do muscle testing, mullein, garlic. Yeah, garlic. Take a clove of garlic, throw it in the blender, cup and a half or whatever of water, blend it till there's no sludge left in there. It's just garlic water. A mouthful, swish it around, hold it in your mouth, let it steam up there and go all the way up into the sinuses, and then let it trickle down the throat. Over and over again until you've gone through that glass of garlic water. Usually, with me, that sore throat is gone in one treatment. If it's not gone an hour later, I do a second treatment. And yes, it might give you a little bit of a stomach ache or a belchy stomach, but I don't get a cold or a flu for 10 days. It's gone right then. It's done. That's the end of it. I don't want it any longer. That's my only garlic story for right now.
Do you do anything for the smell?
I love that question. My wife would have told this story if she was here. Oh, for the smell. Doesn't garlic leave you smelling like a garlic patch? My wife will attest to this. She's working tonight, or she would be here. If your body needed all of it, it used all of it, and none of it made it out to the pores. Because I've done that. I've taken 3 cloves in a single day, and usually garlic, like stir fry or whatever, she smells it on me. It goes through the pores. I didn't need it. If you needed it, all of it got used, and none of it made it out to the pores. Excellent question. Thank you.
So if you didn't need it, how do you get the smell down?
You won't take any more than you need, typically, because if the sore throat's gone, you're not going to torture yourself any longer with it. There's a little teeny package in this kit called Sensei menthol rub. It's used for sore throats, sore teeth, headaches. Mentioning headaches, I should have mentioned this when we were on the first topic. What's the quickest way to get rid of a headache or a migraine headache?
I have Pepsi.
That's a caffeine addicted headache. That's not a true headache. Cayenne pepper, yes! We taught this in a class a few years back, and this lady was going, I have migraines all the time. We told this. The next class, she came raving about the fact that she could get rid of her headache just by taking the powder, dumping it in a glass of water, and immediately, within 15 or 20 seconds, the migraine was gone. No more shut off all the lights, lay in bed for 2 days, and so forth. She was so ecstatic that she didn't have to run that anymore. That is pretty much the overview of what's in this kit. What we referenced today, that book, Herbs to the Rescue by Kurt King. And like I mentioned, I carry it with me. It's just one of those things that stays in my backpack, and it's worth having. The other one I really like, and I didn't grab the copy of it, I don't have access to purchase it, is Herbal First Aid and Healthcare, Medicine for a New Millennium by Kyle Christensen. And his fills in any gaps that are not in this one, and it's worth carrying the two of them together. This book, I think it's the next slide if I remember right, is the other one that I have with me all the time. Dr. Christopher's Herbal Home Health Care actually starts with pregnancy clear through the end of life and talks about it. He's got another book called Every Woman's Herbal that's a better one for mothers and women through the end of life, and that's a totally different class. But that one is one that's worth having in your readiness library, which...
What's the name of the one for women or?
Every Woman's Herbal.
What was Kyle's name?
Herbal First Aid and Health Care is the name.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
How much is that skinny one?
This one.
No, that one.
This one is $10.
Oh, my goodness.
That's a $100 book, but you can see how much use it's got. And this one is the second copy. I have one that's more worn than this. But the beauty of this one, it actually goes through one plant at a time, what it's good for, what formulas there are, et cetera, including enough knowledge of what herbs are in what categories. If you learn the properties of herbs, then you can know how to rebuild anything in the body with herbs. And that includes any system that's not functioning properly. I've got to mention just one or two things that are possible because my clients are broad spectrum clients. Autism, nonverbal autism, usually within 6 weeks. Turn back on the systems, find out what's not working properly, and get started, and you start seeing a change. It's just a matter of understanding the systems and moving through the systems and rebuilding them. And so I take a system-based approach that is heart, mind, body, and spirit, not just herbals. Yes, we talked just about herbals tonight. That's the rebuild, but you have to start at what the cause is. And that's where my passion is what's the cause? How do I help you and your loved ones get 100%? Let's go to the last slide there. I think I'm dropping back the slides. My contact information is on a business card that's here. It's on the pre-order form there, which you can just grab one. It's on my website, wholesomelife.info. You can learn muscle testing for free on wholesomelife.info. Just click on the link and it'll go straight to learning muscle testing and figuring out how to do it for yourself.
Can we order single bottles of stuff from you on that website?
I don't have anything for sale on the website. Here's the reason why. That's why it's called info.
Okay.
Because Food and Drug Administration says you cannot sell and educate. Next
So,
class.
I have a question on the muscle testing.
Yes,
I've heard that it's not 100%.
I teach how to get around and get past our blocks on that one. A lot of people have challenges with muscle testing. It doesn't have to stay that way. I've been doing it long enough, teaching people how to do it, that we can get through that. And trauma sometimes slows that down, but we just work through that. Please.
Chronic inflammation.
Chronic inflammation. We start at the diet and look for the causes. And there's probably some emotional or spiritual causes on chronic inflammation also. I always start at cause, not at the.
On the next class, is it going to be here?
I'm going to do it here. I'm going to do some video capture, bring some plants. We'll do some pass around the plants. And it's going to start on the airway and breathing.
I think before everybody leaves,
Oh, thank you. It's sitting right here ready for us. If you want to try that, there's cups right here.
Oh, both of them.
Oh, thank you. Let's see. I meant to start there. We started in so rapidly. Awesome. Aloe vera for sunburn. Mosquito bites. We did touch on the sting and bite thing. So we got that. Ooh, lavender oil for burns. Marshmallow. Nice. Urinary support. Very good. Brigham tea is next week. Whoever asked that one, or 2 weeks from now. So we're going to bring some in and talk about its properties. So we'll do that one next week. Got that one. Saw palmetto, yes, for male prostate, reducing that. And sleep apnea, we did not talk about that one. I will put that on my notes for next time.
Would it be of any value sometime in the future for to go on a walk out in the backcountry and you could show us useful plants?
They're scattered enough around here that I'm going to try and bring them in, because I was trying to think of that. But for example, one of them, the closest we can find it is down in the ledges area. And it's a valuable plant, but it doesn't grow above 3,000 feet. Whereas Brigham tea grows from 3,000 to 5,000, and some of the others grow at bigger ranges than that. Thank you. And the last, yeah.